introduce robotic process automation and how this technology is used in audit and what are the implications for the audit methodology and theory. So maybe this presentation might be a little bit technical for the audit, for the accounting students. However, I will just skip the very technical part and leave, let's say, 10 minutes to Professor because he can lead this presentation to a higher level to talk about what are the research ideas that you guys can think about. So first of all, what is this technology? So robotic process automation is basically a software that that can automate things, right? However, people talk about this RPA recently. I think it's from 2015. Is because this technology just makes it so easy for the automation to happen, and more specifically, this technology can mimic the human behavior. So this accounting task is in the accounts receivable, where the accountant needs to prepare the invoice and send it to the customer, and then record this invoice on their ERP system, which is the SAP. So what this technology is doing that this RPA is mimicking the human behavior to automate all this stuff, and the same can be applied to the audit work, even though this example is just for the accounting. These are just yeah. So this figure shows that in our daily business work, even though many tasks have been automated by the enterprise resource planning system that Professor already mentioned, still a lot of the tasks remain manual. And most of these tasks are candidate to be automated further by the robotic process automation. And what kind of tasks can RPA automate? So basically, these tasks need to be very standardized or formalized, and they should follow rules. Like if this happens, then I do such and such. And also, you have to automate the things that you do repetitively. So these are what the criteria that RPA can deal with. And furthermore, the RPA, most likely they are for the swivel chair type of task, where you get information from one software or application, and then you process them by rules. For example, as an auditor, I get the audit evidence from the client's system, right? And then I use the audit standards or whatever test to process the data. And then after that, I put that information onto my audit working paper, right? So for this kind of task, you draw information from one source and process them and put it in another source. It's kind of the swivel chair. So for these kind of tasks that auditors do in like most of the time can be potentially automated. So here are some simple functions that RPA can achieve, such as you already saw in the video. You can open a folder, open an email, log into some applications on the computer, and do some data entries, right? So these are just what RPA can do. So I don't know whether you guys have used Excel macro. So do you know about Excel macro? If not, so it basically means that when you, like, let's say you open Excel and you do something repetitively on Excel, you can record your actions and then you can replay so that your task will be automated. So RPA is in some sense similar to macro, but RPA can be applied to many other applications other than Excel. So I feel that I'm going to a very technical side that some accounting students cannot follow. But so this is a survey done by Deloitte. So Deloitte is a CPA firm, but it also does consulting work. So this survey is done by the consulting side of Deloitte. So basically, Deloitte is providing this RPA service to some of their clients. And the survey shows that more than half of the applications of this automation, this RPA, happens in accounting and finance. And now we are seeing that in audit area, especially in internal audit, people realize that, oh, their work can also be automated. So this is the current landscape of RPA. Okay, so that's a very brief introduction of RPA. So the main takeaway is that, okay, we have this technology that makes automation very easy, right? And it has the potential to automate accounting tasks as well as audit tasks. So now I just want to focus on how RPA can be applied in audit and how this can potentially change the audit theory, audit methodology, and something else.
Abby, let me just say a couple of things to supplement. You have to understand the whole frame of automation. Okay, I was in Brazil in the late 60s, early 70s, and we installed at Brazilian University, PUC, first computer in Brazil. Okay, and what we started doing at that time is automate processes that people were doing manually. So I finished my undergraduate, went to work for Rio Light and Power. And they had billing. And they had hundreds of people preparing billing for maybe 1 million clients in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil at that time. And it was literally, someone went to someone's house, marked up a number, brought it there, and then people would calculate kilowatt costs so much, subtract from this number to that, and do that. And this first wave of automation literally took away thousands and thousands of jobs that were manual, repetitive jobs. And this happened all over the world, including Brazil, of course. And this was the 60s and the 70s. And this was obviously a bump on productivity. After that, they installed ERPs, they started doing more and more things, and the productivity numbers were not really affected very much. And people puzzle how you put computers, PCs in the business, and productivity hasn't improved that much. And my theory is that basically is the features expanded, and you could do much more with it, but you are doing much more. In the old days of take a number from meter and put it on a bill 1 million times, you really couldn't expand analytics, couldn't expand efficiency, and etc. And so they started using computers first in this way, which used to be called a batch process. And then progressively, instead of running job in a batch process, people remotely access computers in what they call timeshare, which was a computer centralized and people with terminals. And then the terminals, instead of being local, became remote. They're still using this centralized computer. And then PCs came out with the original Apple PC, etc., etc. And the pendulum turned in another way, in the sense of not do your computing in this big computer, do it in your PC. But the big corporate functions were still being done in the large centralized computers. And then, around the year 95, the ERP showed up. And the big difference the ERPs created is they eliminated what used to be called file systems. You had the payroll, you had accounts receivable, and they're all separate with different files. And the files didn't reconcile and etc. So they developed this relational database, put a relational database in the middle of the ERP. You see the ERP over there, and you had all these applications using the same data. And sometimes this was in a very large machine with timeshare around it. And sometimes it was a relational database with many smaller machines supporting it. But still, a ERP is a concept of centralized computing being used in the periphery. And progressively, people started doing it more and more that way. And the job of the auditor became pick up data from here, put it there, and you are doing that all in your terminal, sometimes in your PC. And you will do hundreds of one record, verify, put this and put that. This went on until the second layer, she calls it the user interface, correct, Abby? Yeah. This second layer of computing, which is avoiding you to keystroke the same thing 100 times, doing it with ERP. And ERP is a process of repeating the same thing many, many times. And once you become more fancy, you put a lot of qualifications into it. But the whole objective is to reduce keystrokes, reduce the number of hours. I don't know what Eddie's estimate is. By my estimate in the 3-4 projects she did, is that the labor can be reduced by half, correct, Eddie?
Maybe more than half.
Maybe more than half, yeah. I usually say 40 to 60%, but Abby knows better than me on this. This is going to revolutionize, but it's not going to be as fast as you think. Andrea will remember her audit days. Firms bill on hours, still. And if the thing reduces many hours out of the audit, they're going to make less money. So they are going to have changed the culture and bill on value or bill less. So actually, let Abby now tell you a little bit about the case studies. You'll see how interesting it is. And this is totally revolutionary. And people, you know, it's very interesting. The firms, they all have robotic process automation practices, but they don't do it in the external audit. They'll do it for clients, meaning we are talking to Fidelity, very large financial firm, and they are starting to do robotic process automation in audit, internal audit, because they have a robotic process automation shop inside, which is trying to improve processes all over the company. So they went to the audit guys and said, you have to do this. But it's not kind of authentically starting. It's very, very interesting what's happening. Go ahead, Andrea.
Are there any restrictions as to maybe how much it can be used in external auditing? Is that why it's not used right now? Are there?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are.
So because the external audit is very subject to the regulations, right? So the PCAOB standard currently is not very.
Not allowing.
It's not. They don't say that they don't allow. However, they don't encourage as well. So the practitioners, they don't know what to do. And especially in terms of, let's say, full population testing, right? So Professor mentioned that if I do full population testing this year, what about if I found anything wrong in the previous year, right? So people are not sure what to do. So currently, auditors choose to be conservative and just move on. However, the audit firms, all of them are investing in exploring how to use these technologies. So in most cases, they do things parallelly. Like, okay, I do full population on this side, and then, however, I just report the sampling results. Yeah, so that's what's happening here. Yeah. However, RPA has been used in companies in the accounting tasks, internal audit, but it's happening very slow in the external audit. Yeah. So I will just continue. So basically, Professor just mentioned that there are 4 major phases in audit: the planning, internal control, testing, substantive procedures, and audit opinion formation. So basically, in the planning stage, you look at the client's data and decide the risk level, right? And then you decide, okay, where should I focus my effort on, and then test the controls, and then after that you decide, okay, these are the things that I will look in detail into. So that's the substantive procedure, and in the end, you summarize what you found and decide whether the client's financial statement is fairly representative of the company's economy status. So basically, RPA has the potential to be used in every stage of the audit, and I will just briefly discuss what are the implications. So first, RPA in the audit planning. So I don't know how many of you have done intern or did actual audit work for a accounting firm.
No one, correct, except Andrea.
Yeah, so maybe Andrea knows this. So as an auditor, auditors use this planning worksheet in their planning phase, right? So basically, this is a document with a list of questions that auditors need to go through. For example, okay, does the total revenue of this client equal to or exceed this amount, right? So these questions are the basic items that auditors need to go through. And the way the auditor does this is to get the client's data, usually in Excel, and then take a sum of this total, and then copy and paste this number. So let's say this is the client's trial balance, right? And then this is the revenue from this trial balance. It's 31,000, and then they copy and paste to a working paper, say, in an Excel file. Okay, they put the revenue there and indicate whether this revenue is greater than that value, that threshold. And then in this case, yes. And then auditor needs to open this work planning document and check yes. So this kind of example goes on in the real audit work, and this is so because this example is just a very basic one. However, this kind of task is very common and very time-consuming in the real audit work, and they are all manual. So how RPA can help? And by the way, in the risk assessment, in the planning, the auditors also choose a sample, either by statistical sample or judgmental sample. So auditors cannot go through all the population, so that's also one issue there. However, if we can use this RPA in the audit planning, things might change. So this is a case study that I did with Professor Zhang and Professor Miklos also participated in this. So basically, there is a CPA firm in the United States, and they are providing this type of audit called single audit. So basically, single audit is a governmental audit that look at the federal fundings of some non-profit entities like universities, state, to see whether their spendings of this federal amount is according to some regulation. So this firm is struggling with this type of audit, single audit, because it's very time consuming. The auditors need to look at so many kinds of documents, and they want to improve their audit quality. So they came to us and want to do some automation work. So Zhang and I went to their office and we observed how the auditors do things in their real work, and we observed 5 engagements. And so this is a flow chart of how they perform their audit task in the planning stage. So the audit firm wants to start with the audit planning because in single audit, in this type of audit, the planning stage is very time consuming. So we started from there. And I'm not going through this detail, but this is just the flow chart of how they do things. And so this is an example of the planning worksheet that auditors use. So they choose yes or no for many questions. Yeah. So through our observations, we noticed that most of the tasks in this planning phase are very rule-based, like the question that you saw, okay, what is the amount of the client's spending, or is this client belong to this category or not, right? So we have many rule-based tasks, and auditors do them manually, and we observe that the auditors do make mistakes in copy and pasting data from one source to another. And also, the auditors do things differently. Even though the audit firm requires them to follow certain standards, but everyone has their own style, right? So the audit procedure is not really standard. So these are our observations. So we think that for these tasks, we want to explore using RPA to see how we can automate and streamline and standardize these procedures. Is this accounting? To some people, yeah, we heard a lot of comments about that. However, I think that it's more related to, okay, if we can really automate what accountants or auditors are doing right now, then what will be the implications for the accounting standards or auditing standards, or like your theories, like what will be the materiality, right? What will be the risk assessment? So these are the deeper implications in it. So I think that as the future researchers, we need to keep in mind of these deeper implications. So basically, however, I want to mention that all these dramatic changes are still not happening right now, because in these case studies that we did, all the automation is still based on the current auditing procedure. For example, we automate their sampling. We automate what they do based on the current auditing standards. However, these are just the starting point, and I agree with Miklos that in 5 years, or even if we take longer, 10 years, this could change to full population testing. So this is the first case study where we examine how to use automation in the audit planning. And of course, RPA can also be used in internal control testing and substantive procedures. So we also did a case study with another firm in the substantive testing. So I think this case is more like using traditional automation to automate the auditor's job. And in this case, we look at another type of audit, which is the employee benefit plan audit. So basically, this type of audit is to examine the employee's benefits, right? Like after you retire, how many benefits can you receive each month? So this type of audit is also very small. However, it's very time consuming. So we did these. So we basically talked to the firm to understand what procedures do they have in this substantive testing, and we focus on the long testing, because this is a very good starting point for us to explore. And then we further break down this long testing into very detailed steps. And then we did something called standardization of the data. So I think that in one of our courses, maybe in the AIS survey class this afternoon, maybe someone will introduce this audit data standards. So what is this? So basically, let's say I'm KPMG, right? And I have many clients. So let's say you are all my clients. And at the end of the fiscal year, I get data from all of you, right? However, the data is not the same for each client. So one example is that, let's look at this. So let's say I got a report, annual loan balance from Kathy, and in that form, let's say there is one column called participant name. However, from another form, from let's say Anshi, that same area is called payee. Okay, so this means that for the same data, or essentially the same data, people name it differently, and people use different data types, different other settings. However, if like for an auditor, if they want to streamline their task or to automate their task, they cannot work on heterogeneous data, right? So the data standards is basically to homogenize or standardize these different names, different data types. So column A is basically the standard, or you can call it a filter. So basically we standardize different, let's say we just use name to represent participant name and also to represent payee because they are essentially the same. So we did this data standardization, which lays the foundation for all the automation. And this ADS data standards is basically a product of AICPA and Rogers. So there is a website where all the ADS recommended by the AICPA in different accounting procedures are located. For example, the purchase to pay, order to cash. So I think that in some later lectures, we can introduce this more. And this is really important but very basic idea for the real work. So basically, we did these. Of course, there are many details there, but I just want to skip that. So that's one case study for the substantive procedure. However, as I mentioned, our current automation is still based on their existing practice, which is sampling. So we didn't do the full population. So we discussed with the firm, like we say, okay, why don't we experiment the full population since you can already automate everything? But they are a little bit hesitant. I don't know whether it's because they are very small in this industry or they have other concerns. However, we do see that many big firms and even some very innovative small CPA firms are looking into this full population testing area. And the third case study is done by Freddie and the professor, which is to look at how RPA can be used in the confirmation procedure. So what is confirmation? So basically, let's say you are an auditor and you want to confirm that whether this company that you're auditing has the exact same amount of, let's say, cash, right, in the bank account. So what the auditor does is to compare the data provided by the client and then go to a third-party website, get their bank information and compare. So in the United States, the confirmation.com is bridging this gap. So they are the third party. And auditors log into their website and then input the client's name and other information and then download. And then the confirmation.com will generate a confirmation form, and then auditors download the form and then compare the amount from this form with the amount provided by the client. So this is the whole procedure. And of course, now this confirmation process is done by sampling, right? Because now it's very costly for an auditor to log into this website and search for every client and then get the confirmation done. So Freddie, he basically studied this whole process and based on the process steps, he kind of automated the step. However, this is still done by, I don't know whether he did full population or sampling, but he demonstrated that this also can be automated. So far you heard that I say, oh, this can be automated, that can be automated, and then you might think, okay, then what are the implications, right? So basically, so this is what we already mentioned for some of these. So first of all, so let's say if most of the tasks can be automated for both accountants and auditors, what are the future roles of the auditors, right? And second of all, for the accounting or auditing theories or methodology, this we already mentioned. If the current risk is, if we can test the examine the item in a close to zero cost way, then why don't we change the current risk assessment methodology, and can we just perform full population, how can we deal with all the exceptions that came up? So Professor mentioned that, let's say we currently just draw 5% of the population, right? And from this 5%, usually I can get, let's say, 2 or 3 exceptions. And then auditors look into these exceptions by, let's say, emailing the manager asking, okay, what is going on with this exception, right? However, if you do full population, think about how many exceptions can you get, right? Especially when the transaction amount is millions or billions. So how can we deal with the flood of exceptions? So this is what math is about. However, there can be more innovative things done by the future research. And I think there will be more lectures about that in the later lectures. And also, I think another implementation is the audit fee model. So currently, the auditors are paid by how many hours you work on this engagement, right? So let's say Nicole, she did this substantive testing for 3 hours. Then 3 hours multiplied by the hourly wage, maybe something else, that's what she will get paid. And also, that's how the accounting firm is getting paid. However, if you can automate most of the stuff, so Nicole is not going to work on what she used to work on, then how will things be priced, right? Will it be priced just based on a flat fee? Or even people ask, will the audit fees decrease? Because you can automate so many things, right? And some people also argue that maybe it will increase because auditors can argue, now we use automation, we use artificial intelligence, so the audit quality is high, so you need to pay me more. So there is really a tension that needs some empirical evidence, and it also depends on the market, right? So if I decrease the fee and Miklos is not, then maybe I will get more clients, then Miklos has to decrease the fee, right? So there is a real tension there in terms of the impact. And then the fourth implication is the materiality. Currently, the materiality is based on, like, the rule of thumb is 5% of the net income. However, I don't know what will happen if you can examine the full population, or if you can use some other criteria to decide this. So I think that these are the implications that we can think about. So that's the presentation that I'm making today.
One suggestion. Can you give them the FEDI demo so they look at it, they click on it, and they can see what the robot in action? You know, like we have several of these, but the confirmation one is very clear to see. It's really awesome. Meaning they have staff spending hours picking up confirmation. Confirmation basically, you say this is my account balance, you email it to the bank, someone signs it, send it back. And that's basically to verify that the account you have in present asset, like receivable payers and bank balances are legitimate. And you do it by hand, and there is a software called confirmation.com that allows you to do it with emails. But people on top of the confirmation.com needs to enter data, pick up data, and etc. Very repetitive. So Freddie wrote for a CPA firm in New York a little robot that does that. It's really cool. Actually, the whole thing is very cool. And I think what Abby did showed, meaning I never thought that we actually had done the different stages of the audit. So Abby added that. So we are kind of getting there.
Recently, Nicole and I are working on another project. However, that project is so auditors. They not only deal with the audit stuff, right? They sometimes interact with the tax issues, some other issues. So now this firm is struggling with the tax task. Like they need to log into a software, upload information, and that takes time. So they want to just let the robot to take away so that they can focus more on the more important things. So here I think I forgot one very important part, which is if most of the work that like repetitive, mundane, non-value add or low value add of the task can be automated, then what auditors will do? They can spend more time on the more judgmental tasks, like to assess the riskness of the client, right? And this is if risk assessment is still there, and so they can think more creatively of these more high-level questions instead of just spending their time on these low-value tasks. So that's why people also argue if this is happening, then the audit quality should improve because this relates to the auditor's judgment and decision making. And I think that Shanta Thomas will have more insights on this because she is doing related research. And there are already people doing or thinking about how RPA can affect the auditor's judgment and decision making. So you guys can look online to see whether there are related things. So that's the